Hey folks, it's the KATFACE KILLA. So, I meant to do my Junji Ito recording before Halloween, but I have a whole gaggle of life-changing events going on like the last month, and I tried juggling all my other Halloween recordings. I managed to get them out, but this kept getting pushed back for personal reasons. So, very sorry about that, but I do have good news in regards to that. And I came across another series while I was going over a lot of Junji Ito's works called Fuan no Tane. So I'm going to give you a little bonus title here. Fuan no Tane is a very short sort of collection of testimonials, and they're kind of creepy and stuff. The artwork wasn't my cup of tea. It's a little cartoonish, but I mean, you're looking for something short, creepy to read right before you go to bed, or you really like horror stuff, then you would probably like to check it out, because like I said, short read. To me, acquired taste, but to me it kind of seemed like maybe people really experienced these stories and maybe sent in, their personal experiences to the author, because typically throughout the volume, a very short one-off sort of story that's set in one spot, and then they'll have an actual photocopied picture of the location where this sort of creepy thing happened. So that was really neat to me, it kind of made me think hey, maybe it really happened, So, Fuan no Tane, acquired taste to me. You really like horror, you want something short to read, maybe. Check it out. So now back to Junji Ito, the author. He's a very prolific manga artist. Most of the stuff he's drawn, he actually did the story too. I mean, you look at his MYANIMELIST profile, I think he has 37 titles? 30 something, and 3 of them he just did the artwork on. The rest he actually wrote and also drew. For the most part, Junji Ito is an anthologies artist where he would put out a collection of stories, and then there will be long running stories within those collections, and then there will be a bunch of one-offs that are pretty creepy or whatever. And I just want to say, speaking of him as an artist, his artwork, in the beginning it's a little rough, but it's good. For a manga, it's not super realistic looking, but it looks real enough so that when he throws in his horror elements and his scary stuff, it looks really good. Especially the expressions on people's faces, really good. I liked it a lot. He doesn't just do anthologies. Sometimes he does longer running stories that will be contained within a more traditional sized manga, or sometimes spread across several volumes of manga. But I'm not going to talk about them all. What I'll do is I'll talk about 4 of them, because Junji Ito has a wide range of storytelling. He can do really anything. When I read his stuff, I can expect anything for a sort of frightening story. Whether it's just creepy, outright scary, kind of makes you think, psychologically the horror, visually the horror. I mean, he's great. I really like him. He's one of my favorite manga artists. So, saying that, I'm going to talk about Gyo, Uzumaki, Hellstar Remina, and Tomie. And just to sort of show you, he has a good variety of what he can do. Variety of his storytelling. He's diverse, is what I wanted to say. So I'm going to start out with, I think out of all those, his earliest work was Tomie. I mean, the artwork looked a little bit like the roughest out of all of them. And Tomie is more of a traditional Japanese horror story. You have this high school female student who, she has an affair with a teacher. She gets pregnant. The teacher's like, you gotta get rid of the baby. She's like, I don't want to get rid of the baby. An accident happens and she's mortally wounded on a class trip. And everybody kind of participates, and they chop up her body and spread out all the pieces all over the place. But the body parts start getting found, and the class is kind of things break down with this class, and people start panicking. They don't want to get caught, obviously, but Tomie comes back to life like nothing happened. She just one day comes back to school, and this causes some students to have breakdowns, and it's just, that's kind of an introduction to the Tomie story. But basically, you're following this high school student girl who her desire to live is so strong. She's narcissistic, so like her desire to be loved and fawned over is so strong that she horrifically regenerates to the point where there are multiple copies of her. I mean, it gets into some really freaky shit when it comes to this girl, where it's just the way she's regenerating, how multiple Tomies kind of their behavior and attitude towards others and other Tomies. It's a really kind of a neat twist on modern Japanese horror, and I'll give it a solid B, middle of the road solid B. Now the next title I want to talk to you about is very different from that. It's more like traditional Western horror, from my experience anyways. So, what I'm talking about is Gyo. Now, Gyo is about this couple. It's a guy and a girl. The girl has a very sensitive sense of smell. And they're just vacationing down in Okinawa. And she starts being, like, plagued by this fishy smell that's, like, following them around and stuff. And it turns out there's, like, some kind of weird fish with like mechanical looking legs creature following them around. And shortly after that, it's revealed it's not the only one. And they all start like coming out of the ocean and invading Japan. It was a very neat concept. I mean, this is not something I've ever really come across it from all the movies, comics, manga, all that stuff, anime. Never came across something quite like this where it's like there's an invasion from the sea. And just the manner of how, frankly, disgusting it is. It was a very neat ride. The artwork is a step up from Tomie. The storyline is kind of neat. I mean, the guys end up kind of wandering around and stuff towards the end. But the horror of it all, you know what I mean? The horror of the situation. Pretty good. I would say this is also a solid B. Now, the two I wanted to talk about more, though, are Uzumaki and Hellstar Remina, because I think they're better examples of what Junji Ito's mind and artwork is capable of producing. So I'm going to talk about Uzumaki first. Now, Uzumaki, if you didn't know, I believe it means spiral or whirlpool in Japanese. So, obviously, the story is about spirals. Now, it takes place following this young lady. She lives in some small town. It just seems like there's always been swirls. It's like the place is cursed by swirls. There are constant dust devils, constant whirlpools everywhere. The clouds act weird, they make like swirling patterns. The swirls just occur naturally in nature, like on trees and stuff like that. They're just everywhere. And over the course of the story, everybody that lives in this town becomes more and more demented and obsessed with swirls or affected by swirls to the point where like it changes how they look or who they are. For example, her boyfriend's father becomes really obsessed with spirals, and her own father, he's a potter. So the boyfriend's father goes to her father and commissions him, to make like a spiral sort of pottery thing. And over the course of that story, the guy eventually himself starts doing some really freaky stuff. Like he learns to twirl his tongue into a swirl. And he also learns to make his eyes spin in opposite directions like swirls. It's some really fucking freaky shit to look at. I'm not trying to exaggerate. It's out there. And in general, Junji Ito's abilities as an artist, where he can touch the surreal, but you can still feel like, not disconnected from it and get creeped out by it, I think is a massive talent. He's excellent at it, and I've never seen anybody else capable of doing that. I think Uzumaki is probably one of the best examples of his work where he touches on the surreal, but you don't feel it's a manga. When you're reading it, you're just creeped out by it, like I was. So for me, Uzumaki, I would say it's a low first class. Now, the last one I wanted to talk about was Hellstar Remina. Now, Hellstar Remina is actually sci-fi and set in, a little bit into the future where there's like flying cars and stuff. But basically, the scientist discovers a star that's way far away, like 16 billion light years or some crazy shit. And it's moving erratically. And because it's such a strange and unique discovery, he gets all sorts of accolades, becomes super famous and everything. And he has a daughter whom he names the star after. So the star is named Remina, his daughter's named Remina, obviously. Now, the star Remina, they notice, actually starts absorbing other stars from, their telescope. They can see far away that it's like absorbing the stars. Which, again, is kind of scary just in that thought alone. Can you imagine there's just a giant, star floating around that's just absorbing other stars? That's kind of a scary thought to me. Okay, but things get worse, and they discover that, call it the Hellstar, so it's not as confusing. The Hellstar starts moving directly towards Earth. Like, it stops its pattern of whatever it's doing, and it starts heading directly towards us. And of course, there's naturally a whole bunch of panic. People go crazy. They want to hold somebody accountable in their craziness, so they target the doctor and his daughter Remina. And just from that point on, it's more than just a societal collapse story. It's literally an end of the world story. Spoiler alert, this is the end of the world. So you get to kind of see Junji Ito's take on people know the world is going to end and just how crazy they become. And in that aspect, how scary it is. How from the top down, how crazy things can get. And it's not my favorite one, but it sticks out from his other works because it's not just sci-fi. Most of the stuff he does is more like modern day or maybe a little bit kind of the traditional folklore sort of horror stories. But to be able to do an end of the world story, and I think it's better than other stuff out there, personally speaking. Even omitting the horror aspect of it, the scariness of just how everybody acts, the decisions they make, everything this girl goes through when the end is bearing down on everybody right above their heads. It was a neat ride. And to me, this is also a low first class. Now, overall, I would say Junji Ito is, when you constantly and consistently put out solid B material and above, I think that makes you pretty great in my book. I haven't really read anything, where I was like, that was kind of shitty. All this stuff I always was kind of creeped out by, or it made me think a lot. I like his stuff, personally speaking. He's one of my favorites, like I said earlier. And especially if you like scary stuff, you like creepy stuff, you want a large volume of work to go through, Junji Ito is your man. Just check him up on MYANIMELIST.net. Look at his stuff, start trying to find it, start trying to buy it. You won't regret it, trust me. If you like horror, you're gonna like this guy's stuff. His artwork, fantastic. Storytelling, it's out there. He's great. To me, when I think of horror in anime and manga, he's the first guy I think about. So, go ahead and check us out on Facebook. Just search up planettyro.com on your browser to get our archived recordings. Hit me up on Twitter at @the_oldboy. And we'll see you around.